Our next guest is the exception to American exceptionalism. That didn't sound right.
Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
I meant to say he's an exceptional guest, and he's here every Friday. Dr. Robert A. Heineman, Alfred University professor, political science emeritus.
I like the way you recovered from that opening faux pas there. Yes.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Dr. Heineman. Let's start out with Joe Biden.
Sure.
Biden's in the race. He opened up with a video about Charlottesville, Virginia, and the attack there. He was quickly denounced by Anita Hill, who distanced herself from him right away.
So, did you explain to our folks about Anita Hill there, or?
Well, she came out and they think it's because of the hair sniffing stuff that Biden does. Biden said something about Anita Hill, and she quickly distanced herself from him.
Well, she's unhappy with him, of course, because she feels she didn't get proper treatment.
Oh, yeah, he wasn't completely for her, was he?
I think not, no.
Yeah, and I remember him saying that one line about, we're talking about the Clarence Thomas hearings here.
Yes, where she made all these outrageous charges about Mr. Justice Thomas. Yes.
Well, yeah, and Joe Biden said, he was sympathetic to her in some ways, but then at one point he said to Clarence Thomas directly during the hearings, we, is his phrase, have a problem with this because here's a guy, Clarence Thomas, sleeping in his car so that he could afford to send his kid to a private school. And to think that he was, on the other hand, going around saying obnoxious things and harassing people, it didn't fit the what they knew about Clarence Thomas.
Well, in any case,
so Anita Hill doesn't like Joe Biden. Biden does well in the polls. A Politico poll came out showing Biden 8 points ahead of Trump. Do you believe that poll?
I suppose it's reasonably accurate as we're sitting here today discussing things. But you got a number of factors involved there, one of which is there's 19 other people running in the Democrat primary at this point, and so I don't know how accurate any poll could be in that situation. It's obviously that people don't like Mr. Trump. There's some people out there, can you believe that, who really find Mr. Trump distasteful. But no, Joe is a decent guy, and I guess we wish him the best. But
you know what Limbaugh said about Biden, which was kind of interesting because Limbaugh is not a Biden guy. Limbaugh said he was different. He was separating Biden from other candidates and said Biden is more patriotic and does not get into all the we have to completely undo the Constitution because of the original problems with it.
Yeah, I doubt very much that Mr. Biden's interested in paying reparations. Nonetheless, if he's going to try to put the party together, I think he has a real challenge there. I do think, though, that, and I may be totally wrong on this, but I do think that the Clintons may well see this as a way of working themselves back into some kind of political position.
Hillary for president, 2020?
Well, I don't know about that so much, but they're trying to, again, milk it for all the money they can get. And Hillary was Secretary of State and Biden was Vice President, so they clearly, as far as I know, worked together reasonably well. So the part of the Democrat Party that sort of reflects the Clintons and the Bidens and such be coming to the fore with Biden. Although I will say this, and again, the man's been on the public stage for many, many years. I don't know of any charges of corruption or anything of that sort. I mean, he didn't finish at the top of his class at Syracuse. In fact, I think he finished at the bottom. And, of course, he was picked up copying, plagiarizing this British labor person's speech pretty much word for word in one of his earlier campaigns. But that's all pretty benign stuff. So, at any rate, it's going to add an element of interest. I think the problem that the Democrats have, just like the problem the Democrats have in the House right now, is you got some of these cases, that are just absolutely hell-bent on impeaching and somehow crushing Donald Trump, so that in the House of Representatives, Pelosi saying, hey, let's take it easy here. We got infrastructure and drug prices and some other things that we could be working together in a bipartisan fashion. But you've got this black Hispanic caucus that they want blood. And the problem you have there is sort of similar to the situation you had with the white racist Democrats during the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and that is they come the black Hispanic people come from districts that are almost totally black, almost totally Hispanic. They've been drawn for that reason. Under the 1965 Voting Rights Act, Congress was Congress spelled out the need to draw districts that would protect minorities, blacks and Hispanics. And so that's what they did. And so these guys are coming from districts where they really can't be challenged. And so they don't care what anybody else thinks. They're going after Trump.
Dr. Bob, you mentioned Hillary in your answer there a couple of moments ago.
I did, yes, I admit that, yes.
Hillary had said something recently that Congressman Swalwell from California has said many times, and a lot of Democrats have said this, when talking about Russian interference. They say Russia attacked, that's their word, attacked America in the November 2016 elections. What do you make of that phrase, attack?
Well, I think there's some truth to it. The problem is, of course, Putin consistently denies that Russia had anything to do with it, but clearly we've identified the people in Russia and the location from which a lot of these attempts to pervert the election came from, and it certainly is a form of attack. And it's the kind of thing you're going to see more and more. I don't think there's any question about it, this whole cyber war.
What did they do, the Russians?
What did they do?
Yes.
Well, I think they released a lot of false news stories of one sort or another, attacking Clinton and as well. I think they were some attacking and trying to embarrass Trump, so that they clearly tried to manipulate Google and some of these other big search engines to favor Trump, I think, generally. But the whole idea of false news, they had a pretty good handle on that.
Now, and I was interested in why you said attack, because that's a point that Tucker Carlson has made a lot on Fox. What do you mean when you say attack? He'll ask a lot of his guests. So that's one of the reasons I brought that up. I wanted to ask you about a Trump tweet he posted on Twitter. It has been incorrectly reported by the fake news media that I told McGahn to fire Robert Mueller, and Trump says, even though I had the legal right to do so. Trump says, if I wanted to fire Mueller, I could have done it myself. I did not need McGahn to do it. So Trump is denying this report. Trump continues and says Mueller was not fired and was respectfully allowed to finish his work on what I and many others say was an illegal investigation.
Yeah. Well, what do you want me to say about that?
Do you think it was an illegal investigation?
I don't know, it was illegal. It was pretty stupid. There's no question about it. But no, I think what we're headed for here, Brian, is some constitutional discussion of the extent of executive privilege. And executive privilege, in the case U.S. v. Nixon, way back in, I'm thinking 72, when we were dealing with the Watergate tapes and Nixon's refusal to release them, he claimed executive privilege. And the court, for the first time, agreed that there was such a concept as executive privilege, that you could draw out of the Constitution. Now, executive privilege means that the president's communications are entitled to confidentiality. And so the president doesn't have to explain what he said in a particular situation, and he can ask his aides to refuse to discuss conversations with the president in the White House. The exception, of course, is when it is used to impede a criminal proceeding. And so that's why Nixon had to allow some of the tapes to be released, because, in fact, there was a criminal proceeding going on against some of his aides. Now, the question with Trump is, do we have a criminal proceeding at this point? And I think we do not. And so I think Trump's telling his staff to refuse to testify. I think he's on pretty solid ground there. Now, if charges are brought, he's indicted, or some of these staff people are indicted, then you might run into some questions here on the executive privilege issue. But again, we have to take a look at the really big picture, and that is Mitch McConnell has pretty much stacked the federal courts now at the appellate level and the Supreme Court level with pretty solid conservatives. And so I think they're going to take a pretty broad view of what constitutes executive privilege in this situation.
Dr. Bob, I get the impression from listening to the talk shows and their callers that a lot of people are skeptical of Mitch McConnell, thinking he's not as conservative because McConnell would sometimes butt heads with President Donald Trump. What do you make of Mitch McConnell politically, his leanings?
Well, he's conservative, yeah. He's solid conservative. I don't think there's any question about that. But the thing that I think you got to understand about McConnell is he's looking at the long term. So he's willing to give up some ground on current issues, which may make him look somewhat less conservative. But the guy's adeptness as a politician, I think, has been proven again and again and again. And the problem with some of these not-so-conservatives is, of course, everything is black and white, and you can't make
no compromise.
Right.
And he's in a situation where he has to compromise.
Well, he certainly does, yes, and he knows how to do it.
How about Paul Ryan? Was Paul Ryan wrongly labeled sometimes?
I don't know. I'd have to look at that a little closer. But, yeah, I think Ryan's pretty conservative as well. Maybe not as...
He was more outspoken. Ryan was more outspoken against Trump than McConnell, I think.
Yeah, and Ryan had a whole nest full of cases running loose here and there in the House. McConnell has 52 or 53, maybe 54 now, I don't know, people. And so it's, in terms of working with what he has as a majority, it's certainly a lot easier than what Ryan had to deal with.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Dr. Bob. Stay with us.
This is a special announcement for all Americans who owe back taxes to the IRS or state. Pay attention, there's a special toll-free hotline set up especially for you. This hotline will give you free information on how you can legally reduce or eliminate your tax debt. Call the taxpayer hotline today at 800-459-1725. Grab a pen or put the number in your cell phone, 800-459-1725. You'll speak with qualified professionals who tell you how to stop the collection calls, IRS letters, bank levies, and wage garnishments, and they'll deal directly with the IRS on your behalf so you don't have to. Even if you haven't filed returns or you are already in a payment plan, you can still get relief. New IRS settlement policies have opened the doors for a fresh start. But hurry, this won't last forever, and your tax problem will only get worse if you do nothing or try to handle it yourself. It makes a big difference in who you call. So call the taxpayer hotline today for free information. 800-459-1725. 800-459-1725.
Back with Dr. Robert A. Heineman. Dr. Bob,
Yes.
a couple of Cuomo stories, if we could do some state news for a moment.
Sure. Throw something out there.
Two
Ryan.
big Cuomo stories out there. One, Cuomo is urging donors to support Joe Biden in the presidential race. Two, Cuomo's former top aide, Joe Percoco, has been disbarred. Now, does the second story affect the first? Meaning,
No.
does the Joe Percoco getting disbarred hurt Biden getting help from Cuomo donors?
No. I don't think so. There. Have we put Percoco in jail yet or not?
He's just about to go.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense to disbar him then, I guess. Although I guess he could practice law from cell block C. Now that's. I don't think that helps Cuomo. That's for sure. But I think Cuomo has always seen Biden as kind of a stalking horse for his candidacy. And so his willingness to back Biden, I think, fills in, as far as he's concerned, an area where the Democrats should be in terms of leadership and policy. And he may well be calculating that, Biden's 77, 78 years old. That's asking a lot for a guy like that to run a really rigorous campaign and end up serving as president. So Cuomo may be just kind of sitting there watching. But we'll have to see. The campaign itself, I think, again, it's going to be very interesting to see how Mr. Biden goes about campaigning. I mean, this is really going to be fascinating. I mean, is he going to get in there in the debates? Again, we've advised him to do what, Brian, on those debates?
You've said many times he should stay away.
Yes. So we'll see if he takes our advice. If he doesn't, I think he'll wish very much that he had. Because you turn these nutcases loose there, and there's about half a dozen or more among the 20 running now. I don't care what they say, and they're all trying to get the one line or the punch line that's going to bring him their 30 seconds of fame.
Now, Bernie is attractive to a lot of Democrat voters early on. Bernie's opponents, at least on the right, and a lot of the conservative commentators are constantly poking holes in Bernie's arguments. Do you think that the Democrats running against Bernie will do the same?
Yeah. But from the right and from the left, the guys on the left are going to be saying, well, no, he's not nearly radical enough. And then people on the right are going to be saying, well, hold it here. What do you mean Medicare for everybody, etc.? So, again, Bernie's been through this before, and I think he could have won the nomination last time around if Clinton and the Democrat National Committee hadn't done everything they could to undercut him. So it's pretty incredible, the whole thing at this point.
Dr. Bob, any updates on the State Senator Kathy Young seat and the primary coming up in June?
It's still pretty quiet. The fellow from Chautauqua County has been running a number of ads, and I think his approach is going to be to try to, and he obviously has a lot of money, whether he's spending his own money or whether he's getting money from some of the
Long Island
Republicans, who think they can handpick a candidate here in this district. I don't know, but the ads are expensive, and they're pretty well put together, but they wouldn't be the kind of ads I would be running out here. So I think he's just trying to flood some of these areas with his name and his picture, so people get some idea that he's running. But beyond that, there's not much else going on. Mr. Crandall is put together some groups and things of that sort. So, and I think the response to him has been, pretty favorable from people. But he's certainly not getting the publicity or the media attention that Borelli, his opponent, is trying to build.
Dr. Bob, a couple other New York State state officials. They're not at the state government level, at the federal level. Has Senator Schumer said anything about, has he weighed in at all on the Gillibrand race for president or any of the other candidates? And if he does not, what does that mean?
Well, it means he's a little brighter than I thought he was. Yeah. No, as far as I know, he hasn't. No.
I didn't think he had.
No. Again, Gillibrand and some of these others, you just kind of... Now, one of the reasons some of these people run is they think somebody will pick them up as a VP candidate. Or down the line, if their Democrats win, they'll get some sort of cabinet position or something of that sort out of it.
Have you heard or do you speculate that Gillibrand's doing that?
I have no idea, but I certainly would hate to see some of these people.
Joy Behar on ABC's The View TV show scolded Senator Gillibrand this week.
Oh.
Joy Behar told Senator Gillibrand that Senator Al Franken was one of the smartest legislators she'd ever met in her entire life. Al Franken was so sharp and so smart. That was her word, so smart. And I just wondered, Behar was blaming Senator Gillibrand for being completely responsible for Senator Franken's downfall. If I was Joy Behar, I wouldn't have given a lecture to a Dartmouth law student like Gillibrand about intelligence and how smart Al Franken is.
Well, it makes you wonder how many senators Behar knew. I mean, maybe she doesn't know many senators, and Franken looks really good. I don't know.
It's the same with these reporters talking down to Tom Reed. Journalism majors shouldn't talk down to guys like Reed.
Not to someone who's graduated from Alfred University. I think that's really being presumptuous.
Well, it is, though.
Yeah.
I wouldn't talk to any Alfred.
I certainly hope not, Brian.
I'll see you next week.
We turn out a quality student, my man.